Hello, friends. So glad you're here to join me today. On this episode of Jennifer.Knits, I'm going to be looking at the last 3 years of Stephen West Mystery Knit-alongs that I completed. We're going to be casting on any day here soon. I'm super excited. So I'm hoping to go through the projects I completed, a little bit about the experience of knitting them, of course, what they contain, a little tips and tricks about some of the resources that are available during the knit-along in case you're a little anxious about joining. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at my color choices for this year's Geogradient Mystery Knit Along that I'm very excited to be getting started any day here soon. So if you are a newer knitter and you're an adventurous beginner, I'd really like you to consider knitting one of the Stephen West Mystery Knit Alongs. I know they can be intimidating, and I'm going to show some techniques that look really scary, but there are so many incredible resources for asking questions, for watching tutorials. Stephen himself creates a lot of tutorials. There's basically a tutorial for every single section that's in a mystery knit along. So if you're making something new to you, like what we fondly call these little shrimps, he had a tutorial on how to knit those. If you are new to welts, he had a tutorial on welts. Not only that, but if you are on Facebook, there are some very incredible, encouraging groups where you can ask questions, where you can, for instance, this year, because of my experience with my yarn choices in the past, I wanted a second opinion on exactly which colors to pick. I had 5 choices that I could have made, and I wanted to know which 4 everyone else thought that I should use. And so I posted a picture of A and B, asked which one do you prefer, and it was just a way to confirm my gut because I'm still at a point where I need that. I really wanted a finished object that I adore, and so getting that second opinion was really helpful to me. So there's 2 Facebook groups that are incredibly encouraging, that are welcoming to newbies who are going to be thrilled that you're knitting your first mystery knit along. I tend to snooze them for 30 days during the mystery knit along because I don't want to be spoiled. I want to see what the clues are as they come out and not see other people's finished objects. But that's actually a real benefit for a beginner because you can see what your project is supposed to look like at the point that you're knitting it, and also get feedback if something's not working out. For instance, there was a question the other day on the cast on, and the woman was saying that it just seems incredibly tight. And so there were some tips provided about how you can make your I-cord edge a little looser by inserting an additional repeat. So find your people. There's 2 that I want to mention that I've had wonderful experiences with. I've been a member for at least 2 years of both of these groups, maybe even 3. So I would recommend both of them. The first one is called WestKnits Knittin' Kittens. So it's knitting without the G and then kittens. And that's because Stephen West always says, keep knitting kittens. And they are incredible. They are wonderful. It's very active. And so if you wanted a community to join, it's unofficial. It's not part of the Stephen West program. However, it's a knit along, right? So it's just one more community that you could be knitting along with. The second group that I would recommend is now called the Unofficial WestKnits Mystery Knit Along. MKAL, MKAL. So it's unofficial WestKnits MKAL, and it's Geogradient, which is the name of the mystery knit along for this year. So if you haven't discovered those resources, I would recommend them. I'm sure there's plenty on Instagram. If you want to add your comments about places you recommend to join for feedback and for community, that'd be great. I know there's also Ravelry forums that you can join. I have a challenge using the Ravelry forums. I'm not comfortable with the format. So I don't use them personally, and I prefer the Facebook group. But find what works for you. Don't be scared. I really think that these are wonderful patterns for an adventurous beginner. That being said, they are large typically. This year is going to be a 4 skein shawl, so it's going to be slightly smaller. So maybe it's even a better idea to join this year because it's going to be a smaller knit. So the first shawl that I'm going to share with you today was the one that I knit in 2020 as part of the Stephen West Mystery Knit Along for that year. He called it Slipstravaganza, and that has to do with so many of the sections being slip stitches. You can see here the completed object. I am over the moon. It is by far my favorite of the Stephen West Mystery Knit Alongs that I've completed. I'm really pleased with how the color choices worked out. I, again, knit it from stash, and I must have just really listened to my own voice because I chose some singles. I chose some really nice fiber content, and they all worked out really well together. I actually included the mohair dare as well. So let's talk a little bit about this very gigantic shawl. So I cast this shawl on October 9th of 2020. I finished it on November 27th of 2020. I used US number 4s and US number 5s. I don't remember which piece is called for what. One of the most amazing things about the Stephen West Mr. Knitalongs are the different techniques you learn. So it was really fun when I started the shawl. And this was section 1. And at first I wasn't really sure about my color choices. One of the other amazing things about the shawl Mystery Knitalongs is as you go, he has this way of blending the colors that you shouldn't really worry about one section. They tend to all work out together. So these giant yarn overs were such a blast. And when I got done with section 1, which was just this, I thought, what is he going to do with this? Just so beautiful. The other surprise was at the end when you're going to knit the border. These amazing yarn overs. I can't remember if they were yarn overs. They created this beautiful little holes along the side. Hi, itchy. And that's also where I included the mohair dare. So he encourages you to use your imagination and think about adding other fibers as you go, right? And so I added some mohair here and then in the rest of the border as well. And I love the addition of the fuzziness and the addition of the texture to something that's already such an incredibly textured shawl. So let's talk a little bit about the colors that we're using here. So this brown, that was the main color. That is from Stunning String Studio. It's their luxury base. It's fingering. They're all fingering except for, I think, except for the mohair. The colorway is called Tree Bark. I don't typically pick brown as my main color, but I had it in stash and it just seemed to work really well with the tone of the other colors that I was using. It is a luxury fiber for me. I don't typically knit with cashmere, but this is 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, and 80% merino. And I remember it being affordable too, if I'm not wrong. So Stunning String Studio is something to look at if you want to try some cashmere without paying too much for it. I also love wearing it like this. Here you wear it around your shoulders. Pull your hair out. And I love to pull it down, and it's almost like a poncho as well. If I mess with it a little bit more, I can actually just make it into a poncho. I love it. Love it. The teal colorway there is Farmer's Daughter Fibers Foxy Lady base, and the colorway is called York. It's 30% silk, 70% merino, and it is a single. So that means it's just one ply. It's not applied yarn, and it allows the silk to really shine, and it just creates a beautiful drape. This is a very drapey, flowy shawl, which I just love. The white colorway is also from Farmer's Daughter Fiber. Let's pull it up before it gets the cashmere. It's this creamy color that you can see here. It's in the Foxy Lady base again. The colorway is Whiskey Butte, and it is 30% silk, 70% merino. And it is also a single. So it's just a real treat to be using these single yarns that had that high silk content, in addition to the brown, which was very matte, but it had the beautiful cashmere. Oh, you can tell I've worn this a lot. It's got a couple little pulls that I should fix. It's got a couple little pills, but all in all, it's held up just absolutely beautifully for how frequently I wear it. The next color, which is the yellow, oh, is such a good yellow. I just love this yellow. I love the brown tones in the yellow, which makes sense why it goes with the brown and the brown that I used as the main color. It's from Small Bird Workshop. It's the Junco base, and the colorway is called Goldenrod, and it's 100% merino, and it is also a single. So basically I used applied yarn for the main color, and it created a matte fabric, I would say. But then I used singles for the 3 contrast colors, which gave that additional sheen and also just beautiful, beautiful flowy drape. I'll make sure to insert some pictures of when I had just finished it. I was wearing it in the forest. We decided to spend Thanksgiving that year in Shawnee National Park. Shawnee National Forest. If you remember, in November of 2020, there was a lot of encouragement not to spend Thanksgiving with large groups. So we decided to take advantage of that rare time that we wouldn't be going home to see family and camp for the weekend instead. And it was just absolutely incredible experience. And I got to knit a lot of this shawl on the way down to Shawnee from Northern Illinois, sitting around the camp at Shawnee. And then I finished it while I was at Shawnee National Forest. And so it's always going to be just such a special memory to me. I'll make sure to insert some pictures. So the Surrey, it was Surrey that I used. It wasn't mohair. The Surrey that I used for the Surrey Dare instead of mohair dare is Hue Loco Surrey Silk. The colorway is Veil. And you might not be able to tell, but it's actually got like a green overtone. So when it was in the skein, it still had like a green leaning cream color. And I think what happened is that really just went well with the teal, and just added a little extra oomph as compared to there. So you can see the white just held singly there compared to the mohair. It's got just that slight green cast to it. So that was a really fortunate choice as well that I'll remember. So this was before I realized that Knit Companion tracks your hours of knitting if you used the app. The tracking feature is free. It's part of the free app. You don't have to have the entire purchase in order to use the timer. And basically, if you're using the app to knit your project, it tracks every minute that you have the app open to knit. So if you have it open the whole time, you'll know exactly how long it took you to complete the knitting part of a project. But this was, again, before I knew about that, so I didn't use it for this. But yeah, it's definitely my favorite so far of the Stephen West Mystery Knit-alongs. I've started to become a little precious about it. I had finished it right as the company I was working for got purchased by a much larger company. And I remember spending January draped in this shawl on the Zoom calls as I met new people, because it just felt like it gave me so much more confidence and comfort. And it was just that little hug I needed as I went through that time of uncertainty. It looks fabulous with the earrings that I love so much. And it kind of let people know who I was without saying who I was. And I also met a really wonderful woman by wearing it. She recognized what the shawl was, and she messaged me saying, "If that is Stephen West shawl, it's gorgeous." And turns out she was a knitter, and she was one of the best experiences during that time while I worked for that company. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this one. We're gonna compare and contrast to some of the other mystery knit-alongs that I completed. I wasn't quite as pleased with my yarn choices. In one instance, it's color that had me concerned. In the other instance, it was the type of yarn I used that caused some concern. So I hope to replicate a success this year rather than be disappointed in my choices. So the next shawl that I'm going to show was from the 2021 Stephen West Mystery Knit-along. This is Shawlography. This one was the most fun to knit of all of the mystery knit-along shawls that I've done. There are so many new techniques, and he went so many different ways with the techniques that sometimes I would knit and not really knowing what it was going to look like. So it was really, really fun. We fondly call these shrimps right here. They're done by I-cord. They're basically I-cord. I found it really fun. I loved this section here and the way that the colors played together. My favorite section of all was these triangles, and I added some mohair to that area, and I really would like to knit something bigger with just, maroon and cream mohair. maybe from Lake Garcon. Lake Garcon has this beautiful maroon. I think it's called Lyra's Hat. I think it would be so beautiful. This was also knit from stash. I want to get my stash to a place where I feel like I can enjoy the yarns that are coming out and the patterns that are coming out as they come, instead of knitting yarn that I purchased so long ago. I'm still at the point in my stash where I have a lot of skeins, especially of fingering. So I don't feel comfortable purchasing yarn. I've shared before, I still purchase yarn. It's just a lot less than I used to. 2018, 2019, I really went yarn crazy. My husband was just every week that seemed like there was more yarn coming in. And so it slowed down significantly. I think I took a hit on 2020, come to think of it. So maybe it was 2021 when I really got serious about it. I mean, we all had to show some compassion to ourselves in 2020. Am I right? We didn't know what we know now. We didn't have the resources we have now. And looking back, it was a different experience. But at the time in 2020, right? Like, I can't blame myself for indulging in delicious, wonderful yarn while supporting small businesses and makers that I love. So I'm very compassionate to myself when I do buy yarn. It's not that I am really angry at myself. I think I'm just more intentional about the times that I do it. I'd also like to get to the point where I'm buying the yarn in person, which means I get to go to fiber festivals, which would be fantastic. I don't think I've been to a fiber festival since I know I went to Rhinebeck in like 2008, and it was a different experience than it is today. You know, it wasn't as huge. Knitting hadn't taken off as much then as it did when the YouTube community started forming. And I know I went to a yarn festival in 2007 in Crystal Lake because I can specifically remember the yarn I bought because it was my first yarn festival, and it was just it was such a wonderful thing. But the reason I haven't necessarily been attending yarn festivals, well, partly pandemic, right? But partly that, how can I resist buying a ton of yarn if I'm at a yarn festival? So I think I would need to strengthen my resistance muscles, or just wait until I've stashed down a bit more to where I'm comfortable with a large purchase coming into the house of more skeins. So the yarn that I used here was from my sock weight collection of after I knit Slipstravaganza, I wanted that same experience of using one yarn weight or being incredibly thoughtful about the yarn weight that I chose. Sorry, not the yarn weight, but the fiber makeup of it. So I chose my sock wools. I chose ones that were roughly 25% merino, roughly 25% nylon, and roughly 75% merino, so that they would all have a similar consistency and similar drape. I also did add a mohair dare to this. I used the mohair in the section I talked about before with the triangles. And I also added the mohair by itself in the border. Oh, I love this mohair. I'm sorry, it's Surrey again. I love this Surrey. I've purchased it since so that I could use it in a hat. I knit a Lenny. It is so swishy and the colors are just so beautiful. But we'll get to it. So let's start with A. Color A is the variegated. You could see it best in this section because this section just it's striped there. It's a variegated colorway. Also right there. It's so significantly variegated that it just kind of shows up differently each time depending on what part. But it's this beautiful, it's got oranges and pinks and grays and browns and a little bit of purple. So pretty. This maker is called Hippie Fibers. Hippie Fibers is out of Spain. It's not one that you hear of frequently, but I fell in love with her colors and I purchased a whole bunch a couple years back. The base is called Pure Sock. There was no colorway on it. Since then, there's colorways on more of her yarns. So the very, very light pink, I was lucky enough to get into a Woolen Vine launch one day. And so I bought a whole bunch of colorways with the idea of using them together. They're all also, because I try to use up a lot of my yarn scraps, that same yarn appears in multiple shawls that I'll showcase someday. But this is actually a very, very light pink. It's a, cream forward, but hopefully it's showing up that it's just got the lightest little pink. And that's because the colorway is called Rose Water. So it's just the barest light pink. What's super cute is that the shrimps are in that light pink, which makes them look a little bit even more like shrimps. Oh, they're so cute. I love this. I loved the techniques in this shawl. So the base for that is footsie. It's 20% nylon and 80% wool. And again, the color is rose water. Sorry, I have my notebook down here. If you've never discovered Erin Condren, not sponsored, just a lover, they have notebooks that you can customize. So you can see this says Jennifer.Knits. And I got to choose the rose gold binding, and I got to choose the front page. I got to choose whether I wanted grid. So it's my knitting journal. And as I get things, I also add stickers, and I keep an annual log of how many hours I knit a day. And as I get fun little pictures or things that I come with yarn, I do some podcast planning. So yeah, I'm a big journaler, and so I have a number of these for different subject matter. I use a different journal for my day-to-day reflections and my annual intentions and things like that. But it was really fun to get this that was customized for me. It feels really special. So anyway, my notebook's down here, just so you know. So the dark red, this beautiful maroon color that you can see there. So of course it's in the border, but it's also each of the colors has its own section on the start. It's also here in these triangles, and it's here. The dark red is Woolen Vine yarns again. The base is footsie, and the colorway is Blood Moon, 20% nylon and 80% merino. The blue color is Leading Men Fiber Arts. The color and in their showstopper base, and the colorway is Fortune Teller. This is another one of those colors that I absolutely fell in love with. Bought a skein of it several years ago and made a pair of DK socks for my husband with the yarn held double, and they are just spectacular. I'm sure I'll do a sock roundup at some point. There's also a medium pink rust color. It's right here. Similar to the variegated. It's got a lot of the same colors as the variegated, so it's right there. And that is also from Woolen Vine Footsie in the colorway History Bound, which I love because it makes me think of books. And that's also 20% nylon and 80% merino. And then the mohair dare that I mentioned earlier is from Hugh Loco. It's a Surrey alpaca. And it's so squishy and so wonderful. I used it in the baubles, which came out so good. I used it here in the triangle section, and then you can see it primarily in the border. So the colorway on this Surrey alpaca is called Marshmallow. And again, it's one of my favorite colors I've ever used. It's hard not to keep buying it. It is got pinks and browns and whites, and it's just so squishy, and it's just so pretty. And I often hold it double with a single strand of fingering, and it just adds depth and dimension, and I just love it. So what's really interesting as I'm looking at the shawl right now is that I actually had a really disappointing finish with the colors on this shawl. I don't know, it felt very old Americana. I a big cross stitcher way back in the day, and I remember knitting my mom. Actually, we kind of stitched it together. We stitched a pretty large piece that has the exact same colors, and she still has it in her house, and she's offered it to me, and I didn't really want it, and now I totally want it because I could display it near my shawl wall because it's perfectly matches the colors of these. But as I was saying, as I'm looking at this shawl again, I really love the colors. I think my perspective has changed. I haven't been displaying it on my shawl wall in a long time. It's been kind of rolled up into a little sushi roll and then put into, I have it's actually a shoe rack cabinet, and I put my shawls as little sushi rolls in the shoe rack. But now that I'm looking at it, so pretty. I'm way happier with it than I thought I would be. Sometimes I think when I knit things that take so long, they have to go in timeout for a little bit. Meaning I'm kind of tired of looking at them and I need to just put them up and take them back out later and enjoy them again. Because, yeah, looking at this, the colors are beautiful. The textures are beautiful. It feels wonderful. It sits very easy on my shoulders. I often wear, ooh, there goes my water. I often wear my shawls over my shoulders like this. I have a cardigan clasp that's linked in the spreadsheet attached that I could just even clasp them if I think it won't stay on my shoulders. But this one stays incredibly well on my shoulders. Really pretty. Really pleased with it. I think I'm going to have to spend more time with it and give it a little bit more love and appreciation because, you know, when I was thinking about this shawl for the podcast and what I was going to say about it, I was mostly going to talk about how disappointed I was with my color choices. But in retrospect, you know, they might not be the colors I wear frequently. They're definitely not colors I wear frequently, but they actually come together very well. So that's a good lesson for me. So by this time in 2021, I was using Knit Companion. So I know for a fact that this took me 118 plus hours to knit. A lot of people found the shawl border to be really incredibly tedious. And in fact, a lot of people replaced the border with a different modification, like maybe the one from Slipstravaganza. I really enjoyed the border. It was like little shorts, boop, 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 boop. And compared to these long rows that we've been knitting, I found it really enjoyable. It's probably because I'm a process knitter. A lot of people did not like the process of making the shrimps. I really enjoyed making the shrimps. I enjoyed the welts. I enjoyed the baubles. Yeah, the whole process. Okay, maybe the mesh. I found the mesh quite tedious because you're striping in addition to that, but I mean, that's a really short section compared to everything. Oh, and by the time that I knit these drop stitched yarn overs, they're not yarn overs, drop stitch crosses, there were a lot of tips online about what to do to make this easier because some people found it very difficult to cross your stitches for that section. So if you're having trouble with a section, you know, make sure you go online and ask people or see what people are saying about it in the forums because there's a lot of great information out there for that type of thing. So yeah, so that's Shawlography. Way more pleased with it than I thought I was. So the last shawl we're going to talk about was the third year of the Mystery Knit-Along that I participated in. This was Twists and Turns. It was probably the most, well, it's hard to say if it was more controversial than Shawlography because, like I said, a lot of people were concerned about the border on Shawlography. This one, you know, when people knit it and finished it, they said it has an odd shape, but that's only when you're blocking it. It looks like, you know, like a spaceship. It's got like this shape. Maybe I'll insert a picture here rather than how badly I'm explaining it. But it's the ship that Han Solo flew in Star Wars. Which words? You're all yelling it. I'm sure I'll look it up and insert it here. It's shaped like that when you put it on the floor. But when you wear it, what's so smart about it is that it really just contours the shape of your body. So I like pulling it up really good on my neck because it makes this beautiful collar the way that it works there. And then I like to pull the arms around like this. Like this. And that way you can see the border. You can see these beautiful panels. And yeah, you can see the back. So I really love how it looks on. I think it looks incredibly good on people. I think it's such an interesting knit. You know, and people sometimes say that the Stephen West products aren't as accessible to non-knitters, that they don't understand them, and so that they're not very wearable. Well, who cares? Knitters know exactly what they are. Knitters appreciate this incredibly and wonderful applied border. And I appreciate it when knitters recognize what I'm wearing. So let's talk a little bit about this one. This knit is the one I was talking about in regards to fiber content choice. So first I was going through this phase. I don't remember where I saw it, but someone had paired maroon and chartreuse together. And I had both colors in my stash and thought, that's gorgeous. I had tried knitting on other different patterns that they didn't pair well together. Jackie Rose said something in one of her podcasts. She's on the Caddy Jacks Knits podcast. She said something once about it's not just how colors pair together, it's about how much of each color to pair together. And that kind of changed the whole way I think about things. I'd always thought about color choices in equal amounts, and that's really limiting and it can be problematic for different things that you're knitting. But different amounts of different colors as contrast, as pops of color, gives you a bigger range of colors that you can use in small amounts. Now that was before I knit this. I really have mixed feelings about the color choices here, I guess, as well. I think I'm happy that I chose this gray. However, this gray is an alpaca fiber. I mean, 100% alpaca. And it's applied sport weight fuzzy alpaca. So let me show you what it did. Basically, prevented the stitches from showing during the cable section. The alpaca is drapey, but it distracted, the fuzziness distracted from the singles that I used for the other colors. So I think I knew it. This was section 1. I think I knew by section 1. Maybe not. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? Those braids, like if I hide the yellow part, which the green's not coming off as green as it is. This is definitely a chartreuse. It's not quite like a goose poop, but it's definitely more chartreuse than it's coming on screen. It's coming like a more like a citron, but it's definitely a chartreuse. But I knew at some point, and I knit with it anyway. So I don't know. This could have been such a more successful knit if I had switched to a different yarn for that gray color. I was hoping that when I added those cable pieces that he suggests that you like you knit a bunch of I-cord and then you weave it through your cables, that it would kind of help with the alpaca, and I think it did, but not as much as I would like to. She found this really fun to knit. I loved knitting this first piece. There's a lot of times where you're dropping stitches and then casting back on again, and then you braid them. I really enjoyed that. I love this red yarn so much. I've been intending to add tassels to this, and now that I'm looking at it, maybe I'll give it some love. I think it's another situation where when I was done with it, it took so long that I just had to put it up and not look at it for a while. And now that I'm looking at it again, like if I added a tassel there, that would pull that down. I could even weave it through there. And if I added a tassel, I think it would really add to the back there. It's very long, very long. I love this section that has the waves on it. And again, I didn't mind applying it. I didn't mind knitting it. It was just this short repeat, boop, 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 boop. It was really fun. I know I'm not the only one. I messed up one of the wings and I didn't cast on enough repeats of the red and gray. And so I ran out of stitches when I was, and it's fine. I don't care. It's at the end of the shawl. No one's going to notice. No one's going to notice. My least favorite section is this. I didn't mind knitting it, but it's a little circus tenty or a little circus. I don't know. I don't love the way that the green and the red played there together. Love this section. It's so pretty with the 1x1 rib. Really pretty, really pretty. So yeah, let's say we learned a lot from this. So I cast this on October 6th of 2022, and I finished it November 11th, which was the least time that I needed. I had since left the job that I talked about from 2020, and I gave myself a little bit of break. I had been working as a professional for 23 years, and so I just wanted a little bit of time off, and we were really fortunate that we were in a place that we could do that. It allowed me to do some other things with family and spend some really good quality time with them. And so I'm really, really glad I did it. But it meant I have extra knitting time as well. So I got this done faster. It was done on a US 5. I went up a needle size just because of the alpaca. So yeah, so maybe I'll take this out and give it a little bit more love again. Because again, it's really pretty worn. Like if I was going to a fiber festival, maybe. Let's see what it looks like if we go like this. So let's talk a little bit about the yarn that I used. So the main color, I absolutely adore this color, especially in this type of yarn. This is from Dyetastic. It's the Silk Sock. We use 2 skeins of that, and I know you can't see it, but it's got so much sheen, and it's just so drapey, and it's just so beautiful. It is 50% merino, it is 50% silk, and it is in the color Bloodstain. So it's this really dramatic dark maroon. You could tell I was going through a maroon phase because that had maroon, this has maroon. So the second colorway, which is that acid green color, or that chartreuse, is from Farmer's Daughter Fiber in the Foxy Lady base. The colorway is Kinnikinnick. I don't know. I'll make sure to put it on the screen because I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. But it's 30% marine, 30% silk, and 70% merino. So I'm really tempted to try that color combination again, where it's more red and less, or maybe it's the teal. I don't know. I love the color combination. I don't necessarily love how much of each one that I used in this. And then the contrast color, which is the gray, is from Tailored Fibers Alpaca. And again, it's 100% alpaca, and it's applied sport weight, and it's very, very fuzzy and very, very drapey. And it's gorgeous on its own. I also remember it being very affordable. So if you're looking for a gorgeous gray alpaca, I would very much recommend Tailored Fibers. It's really beautiful. Right? Like individually, each of the yarns are beautiful, but together, I'm just disappointed. Disappointed. But it was a blast to knit, right? And I'm primarily as a process knitter. I'm here for the process, and the process with Stephen West never disappoints. Whew. Today is October 1st. It is not fall in St. Louis right now. I think the high was 85 today, and I've got the attic lights on, and I think we need to change out the light bulbs because I can just feel the heat that's radiating from these light bulbs, and it's getting hot. I had to put my hair up. Whew. But we're almost done here. So the last thing we are going to talk about is this year's mystery knit along. So I did not buy a kit, but I could not resist buying the project bag for this year. Along with it comes with little trinkets as well for the mystery knit along. I love the design I thought it was so clever and I loved all the different colors and it was just really exciting. So I've got my colors in my Stephen West Mystery Knit Along bag. So several years ago, if you are an avid podcast watcher like I am, you'll remember that Jackie Rose and Caitlin from Caddy Jack's Knits introduced to all of us the half triangles wrap, which was a free pattern from Pearl Soho. And while I didn't think that that wrap would be a good choice for me as a process knitter, which I've been for several years now, I really got curious about the linen quill. So back then I decided to buy several colors of linen quill to probably consider knitting the wrap, but mostly just to experience what the yarn was like. And they've been sitting in my stash waiting for the perfect opportunity for a new project since then. So when the Mystery Knit Along came out and it needed fingering and it needed 4 colors, I just so happened to have them in my stash and ready to go. And like I said earlier, I did have 5 colors, but we only needed 4. And so I posted online to see which ones had a better amount of contrast. They're also a bit of a pink gradient. So as I shared in my last podcast, I'm embracing this part of myself that loves pink. So here's the full gradient together. Oops, got the tag in. There's the whole gradient together. I'm really pleased with it. I'm really excited about it. I am excited to use the same fiber content. I am excited that they are similar and yet different and distinct. And I think this might be the year that I am most confident with my yarn choices. So that makes me really happy. We learn so much while we're knitting, and it's such an exploration of who we are or who we were. And sometimes it's almost a delayed experience of who we are or were, because some of our projects take so long to knit that some years I'm knitting last year's Jennifer's projects with this year Jennifer's perspective. So this year, this feels like the right thing for this Jennifer at this time. And because the Mystery Knit Along is finished so quickly, this is the only thing I knit monogamously. If I get a clue done early, I will work on some of my other WIPs, but I do work on this monogamously. So I do expect to get this done either by the end of November or by, mid-December at the latest. So it always feels like the most current project of reflecting who I am within that moment. In fact, it'd be really interesting to go back to Shawlography and the one from last year, Twist and Turns, and see what was happening in my life based on my journals at that time, and see whether or not those were influencing the choices that I was making. Right? Like maybe I was really stressed out at work one year, and so I didn't spend as much time thinking about the colors I was choosing. Maybe I had too many choices to make. And so when it came to the alpaca, I just couldn't do one more thing, or I just couldn't restart it. Who knows? Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm really curious. But so the colors are, so linen quill, in case you haven't used it yet, is 50% wool, 35% alpaca, and 15% linen. However, unlike 100% alpaca, I have seen projects where it has really good stiff definition. So I had to think about it for a second, but I'm really not worried about it being 35% alpaca. I'm also excited because I hear it blooms and washes up really beautifully. So that's going to be really nice. It's 439 yards and 100 grams. Yeah, what an experience this is going to be, right? So this is the color Pale Oats. This yarn's from Pearl Soho. I don't think I mentioned that. So that was Pale Oats. This color is Rose Granite. It's like a really cold pink, really pretty. This color is Rosewood Pink. Rose Granite, Rosewood Pink. That's funny. They have so many color options, it's hard to choose. So I'm glad Prior Jennifer did that, and now I'm just using whatever Prior Jennifer bought. And this color is Dark Iris. It's a beautiful purple. Really, really pretty. So I'm really excited to get cast on. I'm really excited to have a monogamous knit. Even though I have tons of works in progress, I'm kind of bored with them right now. So I'm really looking forward to casting on another project. Oh, what's wrong with me? I'm sure maybe I'll have to scroll through my Ravelry and see what I'm working on rather than just looking at my project bags. There's probably some little jewel in there that if I looked at it, I'd go, oh yeah, I'm really excited to work on that. Oh, I just thought of one. I'll share that at some point. I couldn't resist. I cast on the Gallus scarf that Amy Palco recently released. I think it's funny that so hers was inspired by the half triangle wrap, but it makes it more fun to knit. So I was like, I'm there for that. But I had already chosen to use my linen quill for the Mystery Knit Along, so I used other yarn in my stash for that. So yeah, so those are the colors for this year. It's been really fun watching his knits this year. I'm really curious to see what he puts out. So many of his works this year have been lots of different types of color blocking. So I'm really curious. It's always got to have a Stephen West twist to it. So I can't imagine it's just going to be a basic gradient. There's going to be new techniques. There's going to be fun clues. So I just really have no idea what to expect this year. So I'm really looking forward to it. Putting aside time to cast that on. We're doing some more outdoorsy stuff next weekend. So we'll have lots of time to knit outside. So that's today's episode. I hope you will comment below whether you're participating in Mystery Knit Along. You could even let me know what your Instagram name is because I'd love to see what you're doing on your Insta. I will not be recording any episodes about my Mystery Knit Along while I'm knitting it. Like I said, I'm really big on not seeing spoilers. So I avoid things for about 30 days. That's as long as I can usually last. I'm not going to last. It's going to take me about 8 weeks to do. So I don't last that whole time, but I usually last at least 30 days. I might have cheated last year just because I was wondering how people were feeling about it. So I hope you're somewhere where you're getting cooler weather and you're getting to wear your knits. I'm looking forward to when this attic is chilly instead of hot and I can wear my knits on the podcast because right now, quite honestly, it's just too hot. It's just too hot. I'm looking forward to maybe filming on the back porch when it's not as warm. You know, there's a trade-off when you move to different places. And in upstate Illinois, the winters were really cold and there was a lot of snow. So we spent a lot of time in the winter. And we're finding that our seasons are just reversed in St. Louis. We spend a lot of time in the summer when it's 100 degrees or 95 degrees and with heat index, so it's 110. And our time for indoor activities is more summer focused. And then we could do camping and hiking and backpacking all winter instead. So as this is just our first year here, we're still getting used to that new rhythm and the new routine in our lives. And I'm sure we'll figure it out. And if we don't like it, we'll move, right? So yeah, so take care. I hope you'll come back again. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It makes such a big difference. I really appreciate you if you would do that. See you next time.
Said that you've been hurt one too many times before. Ended up staring in the bathroom mirror, crying on your bedroom floor. Baby, you can take my word, you haven't gotta hurt no more. Things about to get much better. I wanna make this forever. I wanna make this forever. Said that you felt lost 100 times before, going in circles on a one-way street, running till your feet get sore. Well, I guess you haven't heard, you ain't got around no more. Things about to get much better, so I wanna make this forever. I wanna make It's just another boring dawn. The sky looks gray on neighbors bound the floor. Your days are feeling just the same. For a long time you've been off your game. Don't care to play, don't care to keep us cold. I don't know if your soul's feeling old, if your heart is growing cold. You just need the drop of summertime. And you know, if your day feels too long, you just need a tiny song. They can make the endless house go by. And I know a song, just a quick fix. The secret sauce in your mix. If you don't believe me, listen to the song. And you know, if your soul is feeling old, if your heart is growing cold, you just need the drop of summertime. And you know, if your day feels too long, you just need a tiny song that can make those endless hours go by. You know, if your soul's feeling whole, if your heart is growing cold, you just need a drop of summertime. And you know, if your day feels too long, you just need a tiny song that can make us endless hours go by. Hey, I love talking on the phone. But hey, I just can't wait to have you home. Oh, I'm alright for now, but I need you around. Hey, we both know that this is right. So hey, why should we wait another night? Oh, I'm alright for now, but I need you around. I show up, will you show me around town? If I make you laugh, will you give me some time? 'Cause I know that a girl like you could be falling in love with just about anyone. All I want is just to know you. It's just to hang around, walk on the same ground. You remind me of the days gone by, all the real good love turned up just in time. And if I show up, will you show me around town? If I make you laugh, will you give me some time? 'Cause I